Hi guys, I have escaped to the car yet again with my Palo Santo to document everything that took place last night, which was pretty intense, and I have to share it before it is no longer fresh in my mind. But I did not sleep a wink last night, and the messages that I got are for sharing. So to begin at the beginning, the night before last, which was the 13th, I had a flash vision as I was falling asleep of a familiar lady from my visions, who is actually my great auntie from Native American origin, who became a shaman and ended up in a cabin in the woods, a log cabin in the woods. And I saw her, she's come to me a few times, but last night, or the night before last, her face flashed. She didn't say anything, but her face flashed before me. And then I also saw a really old Native American chief, a chief that I didn't recognize. He wasn't my chief, the normal chief that I speak to, but whoever he was, he had like grey hair and he was crying. And those are the two faces that I saw the night before last, and they didn't say anything, but I was like, okay, what are they doing here? What's their message? Last night, actually for the last couple of days, let's start there as well, I've been feeling anxious and like I sat down with my partner. I was like, something's coming, and I was looking out the window. We live in the attic room, and we've got this Velux window and we can see the stars and moons, and I kept looking up at that window going, something's coming for me, and I can feel it, it's calling me, and there's no escaping from this. It's coming. Felt like an energy or a revelation or an understanding, something. But anyway, it was on its way. And then so last night I was talking a bit about being frustrated and feeling like there's more, even though I've just kind of like stepped up and already pushing boundaries. I felt like there's so much more to come, like there's so much more. So I fell asleep. I just watched a film actually that some friends had recommended, and it was about time travel. The night before that, somebody had sent me as a link saying, this person reminds me of you, the way that you talk, perhaps you should give them a listen. And they were also talking about spiritual time travel. And I kind of thought, hang on a minute, that's two people in 2 days that have sent me this thing about time travel, and they've thought of me. Anyway, I went to sleep. I woke up knowing that I was channeling. I was healing people in my dreams. I was having words of knowledge. I was having downloads for specific faces, and I was literally in my dreams talking to them about their healing and their growth and how Spirit's going to use them and what's coming. And as I opened my eyes from these channeled dreams, I was literally bathed in moonlight. Like the moon was the curtain, or the Velux blind wasn't shut, and I was doused in this moonlight. I look across to my partner, and he's fast asleep in the darkness, and I laughed. It's like, I'm getting these downloads from the moon. Like the moon and I have this funny connection. It's like, anywho, so I wake up and I'm like, oh right, I've been channeling. I've not really been in a deep sleep. And then I heard the moon saying, it's time to get dressed. And I was like, what does that mean? And I just knew, I'm not going to sleep tonight. This is going to be a night of revelation. Something is calling me, and here it is. So I just surrendered to it. And again, I saw this shamanic lady, this great auntie of mine, and she's in this log cabin, and she says to me, come on Rebecca, it's time to get dressed. You really need to remember who you are now. And so she called me to this table in her wood cabin, which is very familiar to me now. I could describe it, I can draw it. But she calls me to this wooden table, and on the table is like the fur and the head of a wolf that you could wear as a hat. And the wolf is there, and it's mine, it belongs to me, I'm supposed to wear it. And then there was this bowl of wolf blood and a quill and all this coding or this writing that somebody had written with wolf blood. And it had these codes, it had these meanings, it had this soul code. And then the moon started to shine through into the cabin, and as I looked down at my arm, I saw the codes illuminating in the moonlight. They were within my skin, invisible to the human eye in the daytime, but as the moon came out, I had these codes written in wolf blood within my skin. And there was certain coding in my DNA that was not visible until this moment. So I was kind of like, well, what is this? Like, I don't remember these codes. I don't remember being imprinted with this wolf blood coding. And then I looked to the wolf, the hat, and I was saying, this isn't right. This wolf is dead. This wolf should be alive. Like, she's my spirit animal. She's a part of me. Why is she dead? Like, I don't want to have like remnants, dead versions, like symbolism. I want to remember the life. I want to remember the connection that I had with this wolf. And as soon as I said that, I was being transported back through time. And this wolf became alive again, and she was no longer a coat that I wore as a reminder. She became a full living, breathing wolf. And then I looked into her eyes, and I was still traveling back in time. It felt like I was reversing the death of this wolf. I was going back, and she became alive. And then I looked into her eyes, and as I was looking to her eyes, I saw a mirror, and I realized I was looking into my own eyes, and I was the wolf. I was the spirit of this wolf, and I started to howl. And as I howled, I continued to reverse back through time zones, and I found myself going back to being a Native American. I was fully embodying the life of being connected to the earth. Trees were regrowing that had died and been forgotten, had been chopped down. These trees were coming up. Animals were coming out. There was this connection between me and the animals. I could hear what they were saying. I knew what they were doing. I knew what they were thinking. I could feel their spirit. I could feel the earth. The earth could speak to me. The trees could speak to me. I was divinely connected. I was seeing visions of women giving birth in fields, and the blood of their birth was going into the soil. But there was this sense of it's all divinely connected. And it was harmonious, and it was joyful, and it was remembering that this is in essence a part of me that I have long forgotten. And then I fell to the floor, and the earth, the soil of Mother Earth, started to speak to me. And she was crying, and she was saying, I'm sick. I'm so sick. And I was saying, well, why are you sick? Like, what's the problem? And she said, my soil used to be filled with the blood of birth and of new life and celebration and tribalness and unitedness and harmony. Now my soil is filled with the death and the blood from war and hatred and retaliation and relentless unforgiveness. And I'm sick. My soil cannot bear the taste of this blood shed that is birthed in hatred, not birthed in love. And I began to weep over the soil as I was picking it up. There was blood, and there was bones, and there was DNA, and all these things in it that were not harmonious to the connection between Mother Earth and us and the spirit world. And I began to weep, and I was crying. And as I did, like, I was taken back again, and I was taken even deeper, further back, to a point where I was with this huge tree, and this tree was symbolic to me for some reason. It was such a big, it had such wisdom. Its trunk was, you wouldn't even be able to put your arms around it. It was enormous. And she was almost smiling at me, and she reached out one of her branches and she gave me this one singular leaf. And it looked like a bay leaf, but it was just one leaf. And she said, go and eat and drink of this leaf and remember who you are. So I carried this leaf back to the shamanic cabin where my ancestral great auntie met me. And I walked into the cabin, and she was wide-eyed and excited and anticipating my return. And she said to me, have you been given the leaf? And I said, yes, just one though. Almost like I was expecting the need for more. And she said, oh, well, you only need one because it's only your life that you're remembering. Are you ready to drink of it? And she put it in a bowl and she poured like this hot water on it, and the color of the leaf kind of tarred the color like tea. It became like a tea in this bowl. And she took me to the window near, it's like she was just like a cabin. Is one room, but it had like the kitchen area, the bedding area. So she took me to the sink, and I was looking out of the window, and the moon was full and it was reflecting into this drink. And she said, are you ready to drink? I said, I am more than ready to drink. I am desperate to remember who I am. Enough is enough. So I drank of this drink, and as soon as I did the same experience of being pulled back through timelines, I found myself being pulled back through history in a moment, almost like I'd taken a drug, I was off my face, and I was literally being sucked backwards into a completely different reality. And I could hear woo, 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 like people murmuring and shouting, and I could, it was very muffled, but I could sense panic, and I felt confused and disorientated. And then eventually the muffled sounds became clearer, and I snapped out of this muffled kind of like disorientated feeling to hear the words of a man screaming at me, Rebecca! Rebecca, you're in freeze mode! Wake up, you're in freeze mode! And I woke up, like I snapped out of this, wherever I was being taken, into this panic and horror. And I knew I'd been standing motionless, wide-eyed, because of what I'd just witnessed and where I'd gone back to. I'd gone back to a memory, and I was standing like disbelief, like suddenly remembering, oh, I'm here now, I'm in a different reality. And they were shouting at me, wake up! You're in freeze mode. And as I opened my eyes and came back, as if I'd been jolted back into my body in a different reality, I looked up, and there was this chief that had been with me 2 days before in my dream, tears streaming down his face, absolutely horrified, staring at me. And we were in the snow, we were in the thick snow, and I was in a Native American tribe. I was a Native American lady, and I had long dark hair. And the faces that were greeting me were of sheer grief, shock, panic. And there was this muffled feeling, you know, when the snow is so dense, it alters the sound. Everything was silent, but a deathly chilling silence. And there was blood, pools of blood all in the snow. And I knew that half of my tribe had just been slaughtered and just been killed. And that this chief's face was just looking at me like, what do we do? And I realized that I'd gone back in time, and I'd been come from me in the 21st century, in 2022, to go back and remember this life that I had lived. And then I had a flash, and I kept going back, and I saw the moment where the Native American tribes found guns. They used to have arrows for hunting, for harmonious hunting, for eating and taking nothing more than they needed, simply to feed and be nourished and to live a harmonious life with nature. That's what their weapons were for initially. And then weapons became a thing that were used against man, their fellow brothers and sisters from different tribes. Like, wars began. And I saw, going back, the first time a member of my tribe, my heritage, my generation held a gun. Not for food source, but for retaliation and for revenge. And I stared at him and I said, put that gun down. You don't know what ricochet effect that this is going to have on the world and your future and the future of your children's children. I said, put that gun down. The weapons are not created for war. Weapons are created simply for taking what you need from nature and living this. What are you doing? And I saw it in reverse. He had the gun up and he put the gun down by his side. And it was as if I was being asked to reverse the effects that war had begun, and making the decision to pick up a gun and to take revenge and to step out of sync with spirit, with source, with nature, with that beautiful harmonious connection that we once had access to. And then I came back to reality, and then timeline slipped, and I came back to the chief in the snow, and I suddenly remembered I've been to the future, I've been to the past. I know what works, I know what doesn't, and I need to come back to this moment in time, and I need to tell you to change the way you respond. You need to forgive, because I've been to the future and I know that retaliating and revenge is going to escalate to the point where we are bombing each other and killing each other, and our children have no home. We've completely annihilated and completely forgotten our connection to God, our connection to source, our connection to nature. So stop. Take heed. Forgive. And the chief's face, they were looking at me for instruction, and he accepted what I said. And I knew a new way had been birthed in that moment. We have a choice. The ways of sin is death. And there's another way. There's a way of living in the kingdom. There's a way of living within a realm that we cannot see or feel. But it exists. And it's a realm of love, and it's a realm of forgiveness. And then God showed me that healing is actually time traveling backwards. And he said, it's not like you're waving a magic wand. Healing is not a magic wand that you wave. You're actually time traveling back to the person that you were before that pain existed. You're returning to that state of wholeness before that person hurt you. Not necessarily physically, emotionally too. And when you choose to forgive, you bring that timeline back and you regain your wholeness. If you don't forgive, you will carry that pain with you, and it will alter your decision making. It will alter who you are. It will alter who you become. It will alter everything. And the ricochet of that will have a totally different effect of if you forgive that person, you can return to who you were before that hurt. Which is why forgiveness is so important. You have to continually not take on board who's hurt you and how they've hurt you, because it's going to alter who you are as a person, and it's going to prevent you from being the person that you've been sent here to be. You cannot complete your soul mission. You cannot come with the message and the voice and the gifts if you're living an unhealed, unforgiven life. You're gonna have a warped perception of reality. And so the example that I was given was when I was younger, I got ice skated over, and I still have the scar. I have a scar from here. Somebody ice skated over my 3 fingers and it was hanging off and there was blood and bleh. Now I have a scar on these 3 fingers, but my body has a way of zipping up and healing itself. So I have a scar, okay? That no longer hurts. There's no like problems with my fingers anymore. My body had an instinctive way of healing that, and it zipped up the wound and the hole. It's no longer an open wound. It's not a hole. However, there's another element, another layer to this, whereby something remained unhealed within me as a child that I literally have never been ice skating since this accident. And Source God was showing me, people are walking around with unhealed, unscarred, unzipped wounds, open emotional wounds, because they haven't forgiven and rectified that. So it's altered their way of living. So for me, I've had this bad experience, this bad memory, this trauma, this traumatic event for me as a small child. So much so that I've never been ice skating since. And there are many, that's a very insignificant little thing, but an example. There are many people walking around with trauma and wounds that people cannot see. And Spirit was showing me with like X-ray vision, look at that person's wound. And I was literally being shown so much, like I didn't sleep. There's layer upon layer upon layer of this message, but I hope I can articulate it in a way that is needed. But forgiveness is the zipping, it's the reversing. So let's say we've unzipped an element of our wholeness. There's an energetic wound. To close that up, forgiveness is the zipping it up, the reversal, taking you back to who you were, who was whole before that trauma happened. That is healing, and that is possible. And we're all, so many of us, walking around with these energetic wounds, because we are still taking on board that altered path that experience created for us. We have listened to words, we have taken on another identification of ourselves due to a wound. I will no longer speak my truth because last time I did that, I got laughed at. Energetically removed yourself from your wholeness. No, I don't care if I was laughed at when I was 7 for speaking my truth. I'm going back to myself when I was 6. And I will start and I will be in the energy of remembering who I was before I got laughed at, because it's more important to me to speak my truth than to believe an identification of something that isn't real. As somebody else's opinion, that's a wound. You go back to the moment before. And I saw that in order for us to move forwards, in order for us to make a change in this life, in this world, we have to go back. We're not actually going forward, because the more we go forward in this state of mind, we're destroying the world, we're destroying ourselves. There's more hatred, we have to go back. We have to go back to source. We have to go back to the Garden of Eden, where we're whole, where we remember we are one with God. We are all one. We are in state of love. We are in state of harmony. We're in state of communion. There's this beautiful world available to us, but we have to go back to find it. And it was almost like it went back to the Garden of Eden, and then we had this choice. We ate metaphorically of the wisdom, the knowledge of good and evil, and that knowledge has given us options to choose death or to choose life. And so many of us have chosen death in our experiences. We've chosen death, a death of ourself, a death of our potential, a death of our of who we can reach, a death of our experience, because we've chosen to stay in unforgiveness. We've chosen to believe the narrative of the story of death, and Spirit was saying we must return to forgiveness. We must return. There is another way. There is another world. I saw many realms. There's so much I saw. My battery's going to run out. I saw a kingdom. I saw a kingdom of animals world. I've never been there before, but I saw these animals, spirit animals, complete harmonious. The lion literally lay with the lamb. There was no hierarchy of animals. There was no animals eating other animals. They were just in complete harmony together wherever they were in this realm. And they had certain characteristics, and these characteristics were here to assist us in this 3D reality. So for example, the songbird, I was able to say that person's a bit depressed. They've lost the song, they've lost the spark, they've lost the joy. Go and visit little songbird. And the little songbird would run, fly, and go and visit someone. And these guides, these gifts, these connections are here to help us, but we have completely disconnected ourselves. We've completely forgotten so much that we've got amnesia. That this life, there is another way. There is a harmonious, joyous, connected life accessible to every single one of us, but we've forgotten it. And there's more, but I don't know how to end this and wrap it up. But what I saw, among many things, was that we're being given a choice. Some of us are going to choose life, and some of us are going to remember. And what I was told, that when we remember, people are not going to recognize us. We're going to be like Jesus on the transfiguration. After he went from death to life, he reversed, he went back, he returned to before he had died, as if it didn't happen. The stone was rolled away. And then he transformed, he went back to heaven and came back in his fullness. He went right back to source, right back to that 100% connection to God, to the point where he was walking on the road with his disciples and they didn't recognize him. And people are not going to recognize you when you tap into this. They're going to say, who's that? Like, she's changed. He's changed. And there's healing in understanding this, because we're going to return to our essence. We're going to remember all the lives that we've lived in crisp detail, because all the lives that you've lived, you've had the same message. There's a reason. And when I went back to that Native American tribe, they were waiting for me to speak, and I had to shout. And who was I shouting to? I had to pass the baton on to someone from when I was there as this tribe. I was looking for someone in the future to tell, change your ways. And I shouted to myself, here and now, only I can change me. I said to God, how can I change the world? He said, change yourself. Change yourself. Don't try and take the speck out of your neighbour's eye without looking the plank in your own eye. How can I help World War III, this awful life that we live in, the anxiety that we're having as a world? How can I help? Change yourself. And by one spark of changing yourself and applying forgiveness and not retaliation, and not feeding yourself with the lies of this world that has been created from the wrong decisions we've created throughout the generations before, we can change it. We can reverse the effect if we wake up and remember who we are and how fucking powerful we are when we're connected, when we remember our divine selves. That's you. That's me. Remember. This is my message for you lot. Remember. Remember.